Hello and welcome back to India on 99.94, your home of Indian cricket content. I'm Nikesh Ragani, your host, alongside Sarah Waris of Wisden, as always. And Sarah, we're going to be talking today about the recently concluded T20I series between India and Sri Lanka, and it's a pretty tightly contested series in the end, all apart from that final and deciding match where, shall we say, the real India turned up, or maybe they didn't, or maybe it was a freak, or who knows. But either way, it was a really good performance. That's the India that the fans want to see. Big runs with the bat. Suryakumar Yadav fireworks as always. And then a good professional bowling performance as well, albeit against a side that was trying to score at over 10 and over from the off. So you're always likely to pick up those wickets along the way at regular intervals as well. But as I say, it was a tightly contested series. First and foremost, what have we learnt from that series? Have we learnt anything?
First of all, you said, "Is this the real India?" The real India is the one that keeps up showing up in world events. So I'm not. I have just lost hope in bilaterals, whatever it is. That's the real India, whatever is we see in world events, and yeah, as far as we talk about the takeaways from this series, I have been really impressed with Hardik Pandya, the captain. I know it was a very short series, 3 matches. India lost one match, closely won the first match, but Hardik Pandya was really impressive in so many aspects. I don't know what you've made of his captaincy, but whatever I saw of him, right from the toss in the first T20I, he said Sri Lanka won the toss and they put India into bat, but even then Hardik Pandya said we would have batted first. We want to challenge ourselves. In Pune, the venue of the next T20I, he said that we would have. It's a good defending venue, but he opted to chase because he said we want to challenge ourselves, not just stick by what's easy for us. Then the way he backed Tripathi, he pushed Tripathi at number three, which he could have easily sent Surya Kumar up at number three in the third T20I. So that was very impressive. Just the fact that he understood that Umran Malik might not be the best bet in the power play overs. He'll go for runs in the power play overs, and he took the new ball, kept Umran Malik for the middle overs. And just the quote from Akshar Patel, where after the series ended, Akshar Patel said that Hardik Pandya has given me the license, told me to bat freely, and just said that whatever happens, he's going to protect me. And he that's what a captain should be. And just to know, Akshar Patel is not a very young player, but just to know that Hardik Pandya is giving that kind of license to everyone. Even Tripathi, who's a youngster, Hardik Pandya actually put up an Instagram story after the match, after the third T20I. Tripathi had scored 35 in 16, if I'm not wrong, and he put up an Instagram story for Tripathi saying that well done, and just that kind of confidence that he's not here to change your natural game. He's backing you and encouraging you, and it's been very impressive. I don't know if you agree with
Yeah.
me, but
I
yeah.
think he's a great people manager, and that is something that you could only really say that about Hardik Pandya in the last 12, 18 months at the most, really, because we all know what type of character he was when he came into the side a few years ago. He was this young kid. He was, branded as being a little bit arrogant. And obviously, we've talked about his maturity in recent times and becoming a family man and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's really rubbed off on his cricket. And, it's really sort of brought him out as a leader, really. We saw that with the Gujarat Titans in the IPL, and they won in their very first season as a franchise. And a lot of that was down to his captaincy and the kind of environment that he created around the team. So I'd certainly agree with that. I mean, there were some tactical things which were a little bit questionable, but he's a young captain, so you've got to allow him that. Bowling Akshar Patel in the final over in the second T20I, that was questioned. These things happen, right? And what we've got to understand as well is that there will hopefully be more good days than bad, but there will be bad days initially if India is to sort of completely refresh the way They play T20 cricket under a new captain if Hardik does get the job full time as well. It's going to be a team full of young players, a team full of players learning their trade, a captain learning his trade at the top level as well. So it's like England post 2015 World Cup under Owen Morgan's captaincy. I know he was the captain in 2015, but that was very last minute and he'd never really had any time to build anything. So it was really post 2015. And look, England used to put on some brilliant performances in white ball cricket, but they used to get thumped sometimes as well. They used to get all out for 150 sometimes, trying to score 400 in an ODI, for example. And similar things would happen in T20s here and there. So you've got to understand that there are going to be some mistakes made. There's going to be days where India turn up, try and play in their particular way, in the Hardik Pandya style, whatever that might be in months to come, and they come undone because it takes time. These things take time. It's almost like building from scratch. If they are to stick with this young core of players, there's not a lot of experience in the wider squad, really, if you're taking out your Kohlis, your Rohits, your KLs, your Rishabh Pants, all these guys, you're really starting from scratch. Umran Malik is very new to international cricket. Hardik Pandya is a new captain. Rahul Tripathi, all these young guys, even Arshdeep. Arshdeep has played at the highest level in the World Cup, but he's a young guy. You've got to remember that. He's still learning his game. So mistakes will happen. But I think the fact that he protects his players when those mistakes are happening, takes it on his shoulders, I think that's a good sign for the future.
Yeah, though after the I think second T20, he did pinpoint Arshdeep and he said that bowling as many no balls is a crime. That was a statement which I feel he shouldn't have said that, because we went after Rohit when he passed a very similar comment in the World Cup semi-final, putting the blame on the bowlers. So I think that's something which Hardik Pandya should have stayed away from. But yeah, he's new. He will learn, and I hope he learns and he improves. I just have a question for you. Throughout the series, India made two changes, which were both were forced changes. Arshdeep and Harshal Patel, and then Sanju Samson played the first match, and then he was out injured because Rahul Tripathi came in. So what we've seen, probably it seems that Hardik Pandya is someone who's going to back his players. On the other hand, Rahul Dravid, under him, India have made a lot of changes, like from one match to another. There, I was actually very surprised that Rahul Tripathi held on to his place for the third T20. Maybe he wouldn't have, because the Indian team of late has not really been the sort of they have not really backed their players as much. They've made these changes, chopped and changed their 11s from game to game, not even series to series. So Hardik Pandya seems someone who is going to stick to a team and back them. With Dravid, even in his playing days, he liked making these changes. He didn't really have a very settled team, you could say. He liked making these changes. So do you think down the line Pandya and Rahul Dravid would be a good pair? Or he's spoken a lot about Ashish Nehra and how Ashish Nehra helped him in Gujarat Titans. Would you like to see Ashish Nehra come into the Indian team somehow? Because that's something which, now thinking of it, it could be an issue between Hardik Pandya and Rahul Dravid.
Look, I personally would like to see a different test coach and test captain to the white ball setup. Completely different coach, completely different captain through white ball. And if it's not the test and white ball split, at least tests and ODIs have their own leadership, and T20s at least that, if not all white ball. So it's something that could happen. I'm not sure if it's perhaps an issue with Rahul Dravid. These things can be hashed out, can't they? And it depends how well the two get on behind closed doors. And I'm sure they can sit down and come to some sort of agreement on team selection if that is the case, and if Dravid continues across all three formats, and if Hardik indeed is given the permanent captaincy as well. We still don't know that. Ashish Nehra, look, I think the reason a coach like Ashish Nehra suits somebody like a Hardik Pandya is because, although, look, we see Ashish Nehra as this joker character, don't we? He's the funniest guy in the world. I've done podcasts with him as well, and his stories are amazing. He's funny even when he's not trying to be funny. All his teammates talk about him in glowing terms in terms of how much of a sort of, tension release he was in the dressing room when you're in those pressure situations, and Neraji would turn up and it just lightened the mood all of a sudden, even if he wasn't trying to. It's the way he talks, it's his mannerisms. He's just a funny guy, and he's a very clever guy. He's a very intelligent coach as well. But I think the fact that he relaxes everybody around him creates that relaxed environment anyway for the group of players. And that kind of suits Hardik Pandya because he's a laid-back captain and a laid-back kind of leader and go and express yourselves kind of guy, rather than let's sit down, let's get the whiteboard out, let's get the PowerPoint out and all that. And then there might be some of that, there always is in modern day cricket, but Hardik Pandya is a bit more old school in that respect, a bit like you could say maybe Ben Stokes, just go out and express yourself and enjoy the game, go and entertain. That's what it's about. That's what they're there for. They're there to entertain. Sport is about entertainment.
Yeah.
You don't want to bog yourself down with too many stats and too many PowerPoints and yo-yo tests and this and that. And, stuff like that does matter to an extent. Of course it does. And we're not saying, that none of that should exist, because it's very helpful. But, take it in little chunks. Take the bits of information you need. But ultimately, you're here because you're a talented player. You're playing for your nation. Go out there and show what you can do. Entertain the public. And I think that's what kind of guy he is. And that's maybe why that relationship has worked so well in the IPL. Who knows if Nehra will ever become a coach of India. If he carries on doing well at domestic level, then why not? That relationship does seem to be working well. But equally, I think it could still work well with somebody like a Dravid. If that is to be the case, I'm sure they're grown men. They can work it out, can't they? And just quickly back on that point before we take a break on Arshdeep Singh. Yeah, you're right. He shouldn't have said that. Often there is the case of English isn't his first language. Yeah, he does speak English really well. But, just in terms of those expressions and the ways of saying things, and, sometimes it doesn't come across that well. And, it might just be a language thing and he didn't quite know the right phrase to use at the right time. What he said is correct, though. No balls are a crime. Maybe that should be said behind closed doors, though, in terms of being that blunt about it. But maybe he knows Arshdeep Singh has got, some strong shoulders there and he can take that.
Yeah.
So, you got to look at it from that perspective as well. When you're talking about players in public, you know which characters you're talking about. And that all comes down to individual management, doesn't it? Individual player management. You got one guy who's a bit sensitive. You got one guy who can take the criticism, and you've got to manage them accordingly and say the right thing. So who knows? Arshdeep Singh might be, your typical Punjabi, hard man, difficult to break down. So he can take that, and maybe that'll fire him up, not to bowl any more no balls. Who knows? That could have been the tactic, but
Well,
we'll
he
wait
didn't
and
bowl
see.
no
Right.
balls in the next match. He bowled wides in the next match. So, yeah. He bowled 4 or 5
Well, at least
wides in the
one
next
thing
match.
worked,
Yeah.
didn't it? One thing worked at least.
Yeah.
Right, we'll take a short break and we'll be back in a moment.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
So we've talked about Hardik Pandya, the captain, a little bit about Arshdeep and a couple of the other guys. I mean, we mentioned some of the batting there, and obviously Sanju Samson unlucky to miss out through injury after that first game, which is a big blow to him because he might well have got a run at playing in a whole series, which is quite a rarity for him. Rahul Tripathi came in and did really well. I mean, look, that's one big positive, obviously. One negative, perhaps, is, overall, I mean, if you look at the last sort of 12 months, particularly when some of the so-called senior players in the T20 setup have decided to take rest or have been asked to take rest. Shubman Gill's always shoehorned into the T20 side, isn't he? Is it time that India realised that they've got so much more talent? Why waste this guy, this really talented potential, Test great and ODI great? Why waste him in T20Is? There's no point, is there, when you've got that much talent?
Yeah, I don't think it's about talent.
And it's not his best format as well.
I don't think it's like it's that. It's probably just the selectors thinking, okay, it's easier to have the same set of players in all formats. That's why there is talks of having Surya Kumar Yadav in the test setup also. He might be fine there, but there is someone like a Sarfaraz Khan doing well. So, it's just been a history with Indian cricket of late, mixing up formats. There is Gaikwad in the T20I mix as well, and he's played 9 T20Is, and T20Is isn't his best format. By now, I've lost hope on Prithvi Shaw ever playing for India again, unfortunately. So I won't even go down that track. But there are other talented players. Why not just have a Rahul Tripathi open? He can open as well. And with Gill, he was with KKR from 2018 to 21, and I have seen him more closely in T20s than maybe anyone else would have. And when he was released from KKR, a lot of people were like, okay, it's how could KKR release him? How could KKR release him and all? But actually, it wasn't. I personally felt it wasn't the worst move, and I don't know if you think of, if you know that quote by Maklam, which became famous, that if you can't change a man, change the man. It was indirectly hinted at a Shubman Gill. So he was talking about KKR's slow batting approach up the order in the power play, and he was like, we've given a lot of players an extended rope, and they've not really given us the desired results. And then he went on to say, if you can't change a man, change the man. Like, okay, he's not doing well, then we might as well get someone else. Unfortunately, then the COVID pandemic struck and the IPL was postponed, so we never really got to know what the result of that would have been. But with Gill, it's like, any layman would tell you that it's not his best format. I just dug up some stats and it just proves that. So overall strike rate is 129. Power play strike rate is 119.95, not even 120. And another interesting thing is that since 2018, there are two Indians who have a power play strike rate of less than 120, which is Ishan Kishan and Shubman Gill. And guess what? Both of them were our openers against Sri Lanka. So it's like the last World Cup, you had Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul struggling in the power play, and then you make a roadmap for 2024 T20 World Cup and you bring in exact similar players. So, like, what's the whole use of it? What's the new team that you're talking about? With Shubman Gill, he is good against spin, but then his middle over power play is 128. So, it's like, he starts off slowly and is not really able to capitalize against his strengths also, which is spin. So at best, like, even if he gets on scores the big runs, he has a good average in T20s. He'll score the 50s, but it'll come in 40, 45 deliveries. And you have to ask, like, whether that's the kind of batter you need in your team. Even this third T20, I think he was batting with Rahul Tripathi, and he was batting on 14 in 17 deliveries. So later he went on and kind of caught up, but if not for Rahul Tripathi, Hardik Pandya later said he changed the momentum of the game for us. If not for that innings, it could have just been the tuk-tuk kind of batting, as you say. So, I have never been in favor of Gill in T20s. Right from the KKR days, I got a lot of hate for it. He's a youngster, he will improve, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, you have to see if he is fit enough to be in the team right now. And right now, I don't think that, he's fit enough. He's not suitable to be in my 11, at least for now. Yeah,
there is a bit of an obsession there, and you're right about mixing formats and not selecting particular players for particular formats, and who knows why that is. Look, it's the same selection sort of setup now, isn't it? I know the selectors have changed, but Chetan Sharma, remember I told you on the last episode that he'll be back. He was back later that day after we recorded officially. And, there's a new selection panel and, some names that people will be familiar with. SS Das, of course, played quite a bit of Test cricket in the sort of early 2000s, and the only man shorter than Sachin Tendulkar in the Indian side at the time, which was quite a thing. Salil Ankola. There's some more recent names which people might be a bit more familiar with, but let's see if they have as much influence as we hope they do have in trying to freshen things up in terms of Indian cricket. I mean, there's no sort of clear plan with this selection committee. First of all, I don't know if there should be a committee, like I've discussed before. But also, there's no like T20 specialist on the committee. Somebody who's done really well in T20 cricket, knows the modern T20, like a Dinesh Karthik. I'm not sure he would have wanted it because he still plays in the IPL. But, if he, somebody like that, somebody maybe who's retired already and has performed really well throughout the IPL and done well in T20 and just knows T20 cricket. There's nobody who's maybe a test specialist. There's people who've played test cricket, yes, but there's nobody who's like a great of the game or anything like that. So I'm not saying it's only greats of the game that know test cricket. So we'll wait and see if any of these guys, do come up with some interesting selections, or if they just go with pretty much the status quo and maybe just try the odd new player for the sake of it every now and again. But it doesn't really inspire you, does it, when the chairman of selectors is supposedly sacked and then he's never really lost his job because he's been selecting teams in the interim, and now he's officially going to be selecting teams going forward as well. And this is I'm not trying to have a go at Chetan Sharma here, brilliant cricketer and, a very good man, but if it didn't work, then why go back to it? That's the question. And I suppose you'd agree with that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And one more point is Bumrah, as we are speaking, Bumrah earlier today, a few hours ago, he was ruled out of the Sri Lanka series, and he had been selected a few days ago because apparently he had been passed fit by the NCA, and today the BCCI wants to rest him. There was an article in Crickbuzz which said that it was on the insistence of the selection committee that Bumrah was drafted into the squad. Last year, during the Australia series, when Bumrah suddenly made a comeback and then he got injured again and then he was ruled out for 4 or 5 months, that series, I think it was Dravid who later came on and said that, Bumrah was never fit and we rushed his selection. And I think it was the selection committee, Chetan Sharma or someone else, I'm not really sure, but they said that, no, it was Dravid, yeah. He said that we have to look at the NCA and the selectors for, for the lack of communication or, why they are going on and passing unfit players as fit. So that in September, they had selected Bumrah, who wasn't really fit. Again, now they selected Bumrah, he wasn't really fit 100%. So that's another question mark on the whole selection committee. And do you think it's laziness on their part that they just keep picking players from one format to another, or they just assume that, okay, wow, he's a great generational player, someone like a Gill, and he is automatically assumed to do well in T20s, or a Sky will do well in Test cricket, or maybe it's laziness, or maybe it's just a weird assumption which obviously is not.
Yeah, but it can work on one hand, but then on the other hand, Prithvi Shaw, when he was coming through, even as a teenager, or even as a 12-year-old, people raving about this guy as a once in a generational, more than that really, almost once in a lifetime kind of player, or of the ilk of somebody like a Sachin, the talent that he had at that level and breaking world records and coming in, making his Test debut, scoring a century on Test debut, and all these brilliant things that he did. And then he's been dropped for other, all right, maybe it's off the field stuff, but, if they were that obsessed about someone's talent and being once in a generation and just you've got to select them no matter what, then he would be in across all formats as well.
Sanju
But
Samson.
he's not. So yeah, Sanju Samson as well, maybe not quite as talented as such in those early days, but still a brilliant player. And again, his personal favourites, maybe that's what it is, and we can't have that with the selection committee, which that might be the problem. People have got their favourites. They want to keep selecting KL Rahul in across all formats, even if he's not scoring any runs and all that other type of stuff. So just another frustration. Right, we'll take another short break, and again, we'll be back in a moment.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
So, some of the selections there which we've questioned, some which, we like, trying out new guys like Rahul Tripathi, and, Sanju Samson probably would have got all 3 games had he been fit as well. So, some positive signs as well. Umran Malik, again, getting a run, which he needs. He needs desperately to have a run at international level to find his game really at that very top level. One selection dilemma, though, that a lot of people have, and this is across formats as well, because don't forget, we've got the Border Gavaskar Trophy coming up very soon. So back to Test cricket, and even in white ball cricket, especially T20s, the question mark has come up, hasn't it? Akshar Patel or Ravindra Jadeja? We've spoken about it briefly before. Akshar's the man in possession. He's batting probably better than he ever has at the moment, and doing all right with the ball. He's not doing any worse than Jadeja would do. Maybe he's not as good a fielder. Well, not maybe, he's definitely not as good a fielder as Jadeja. Jadeja is the best in the world. But he's not bad. He's a pretty good fielder as well. Who do you reckon? Who are you going for?
Right now on current form, it has to be Akshar Patel for me. He is overall a better striker. He has a better strike rate. This is just based on batting form. Overall, he has a better batting strike rate than Jadeja, and we've spoken about this. You had pointed out, how the stats are very similar, but Akshar Patel's batting is a little bit better than Jadeja's overall. And since 2022 IPL, Akshar has improved his batting tremendously. In the IPL, he had a strike rate of 150 and average 45, which is pretty decent. And currently, since 2022, Akshar averages 23, but he has a strike rate of 165, which, at number 7, he bats at number 7, 8, whatever he bats in, which is exactly what India needs. And it's not only just, he's not a blind slogger. In the first T20, India were in trouble. He combined with Deepak Hooda, and he played a very mature knock. India could have won. Shivam Mavi later came in, and he surprised everyone by playing a few shots as well. So yeah, that was impressive. I know you have a lot to say. You have spoken about both of them. Which is your preferred pick? Currently, for me, it's Akshar. Do you agree with me, or do you want Jadeja?
If we're talking T20Is, I would say go with Akshar because he's the man there. He's in form. Why would you want to drop a guy like that? You're going to dent his confidence for a start. So then when you do need him further down the line, he might be damaged from that mentally. So, if he's playing well, you can't drop him. So he's got to stay there. You can't afford 2 players who are very similar like that. And yeah, people will say, oh, they're a bit different, this, and then not really. They're both slow left-arm bowlers. They both fire it in. There's not a lot of turn on offer. They're both good fielders. One's outstanding, one's very good. And the batting, Akshar, as you say, he's doing exactly the job that's required of him, and he can play those mature knocks as well. So he's a man in form, and why not? I mean, Jadeja's been a little bit injury prone recently. Obviously, he's been out for months this time. But, he's had a few little niggles. He's getting a bit older. He's probably still ahead of Akshar in the pecking order, certainly for overseas Test cricket.
Yeah.
But even at home, they tend to go with the Jadeja-Ashwin combination more often than not. Akshar gets his chance when either Jadeja's injured or sometimes they want to play three spinners. But he's the reserve. So why not just, again, split the formats? Have Jadeja as your main guy in tests, Akshar as your main guy in ODIs and in T20Is, and then in ODIs, you've got a decision to make. But we don't need to maybe discuss that as of yet. You'd probably say Akshar at the moment again is the man in possession of that slot if they do play a left arm spinner in there, or do they even play either of them in ODIs? Have they got enough other players to take up those slots? So that's up for debate. But yeah, keep Jadeja for tests and maybe ODIs, and Akshar for T20Is, and see what else he's available for. Really, that's the route I'd go down. One position though that is secure and has been secure for quite some time. Just before we finish, we have to quickly talk about Surya Kumar Yadav. Some of those shots should be illegal, right?
Yeah, I'm just tired of talking about him. And there was a very interesting tweet by Ian Bishop during his innings that, do you think a late debut worked in his favor, or would he have been as impactful if he made his debut at the age of 25, 26, 27? I somehow feel it's very easy to talk about this in hindsight and say, yeah, it worked for him and all. But I do agree with that, because he, in an interview on Breakfast with Champions with Gaurav Kapoor, he did say how the repeated snubs helped him, how his wife has helped him with the diet and his fitness and everything. I would like to know your views on that. Do you think making his debut at the age of 31, 32 worked for him? Almost like Rahul Tripathi. Rahul Tripathi is 31, 32, so he's not a youngster. He has been doing well in domestic cricket. I've been rallying for, picking him. I did an article on him, a whole 1,500 word article on Rahul Tripathi last, after the IPL, pick him in the squad and all. So Tripathi is almost like a sky. Do you think a late debut has worked for him, or maybe we've lost a few good years of Sky by not picking him?
It's an interesting one. I think for
Yeah.
certain players, it works when you've got past a certain age, and not just by numbers but just by the experience of the amount of cricket you've played. You've got to know your game perfectly. You're basically the best version of yourself, and that's sort of a prime age for a batter, isn't it? 30, 31. That's sort of the prime age for a batter in international cricket. And for him, it's not been, he's not reached his prime through international cricket. It's been through domestic cricket, but he's kept that motivation. And that can often be the challenge, because, look, I'll give you an example of me, and I'm, nowhere near, I was never anywhere near international quality, but I wanted to become a professional cricketer. And, this is talking about trying to get into a county back when I was younger. And, by the age of sort of 17, 18, it's probably not going to happen. But then you think, all right, there might still be a chance. You do well in club cricket, and your local county, it comes in the papers, all the scores, and then, the newspapers in those days, and online. And, the scores are there for the Premier League, which is like one level below county cricket. So you never know, you perform consistently there. But then by the age of like 21, it's not going to happen. And you kind of lose that motivation. Well, you think it's not going to happen. You lose that motivation, and you just like, your heart's not in it. Whereas for him, he's a different type of character. He, usually by the age of like 28, 29, 30, you've not made your debut. Even though he's from Mumbai, which traditionally, used to get favoured sometimes in selections and stuff, especially if you're a batter, the Bombay batting school and all that. It just didn't happen, and it would have been so easy for him just to say, well, it's not going to happen. I'll just relax and not try as hard. Not try as hard, but he's still playing professional cricket. He's still playing in the IPL. But do you know what I mean? That extra motivation to become an international cricketer, like that match against the RCB a couple of years ago, where Mumbai were in a really crap position. He won them the game. It was a brilliant knock. It was against Virat Kohli, who was then the Indian captain, and it was a message.
Yeah.
That innings was a message at the age of 31, whatever he was, to say, this is what you should be selecting me for your team, basically.
And
this
that
is what I do.
Yeah.
And for him to have that level of motivation at that age, I think that's spectacular. And it only works for certain characters, and it clearly has worked for him.
Yeah, and that match which you spoke about was a few days after the India squad for Australia ODIs T20Is had been announced. So that added to the whole context and the whole drama about that incident where he was staring, and they were involved in a stare fest and all this kind of all that thing. And also Surya Kumar is just like an inspiration to the other cricketers also. You can say that by 21, 22, 23, if they've not yet cemented their place, yeah, you're right, they will lose hope. But with him coming and then doing so well, maybe it's kind of like an inspiration also to the other players that okay, just continue doing well. It's okay if I'm 29 or even 30, my time will come. So yeah, that way it's such a great message for the other domestic stars who it's so easy for them to lose hope, because obviously the competition is huge in India, and if you're either in the radar of the selectors or you're not. As you earlier also said, there is favoritism. We are not accusing them of favoritism, but obviously there are certain players who are the favorites of the coach and the management, like Deepak Huda. Rahul Dravid loves him. He backed him in the under 19 days. He backed him in Rajasthan Royals. So Deepak Huda, he's just a favorite of Rahul Dravid. So there are cases like that. And yeah, Surya Kumar is just a fine example that it's okay, whatever it is, not only for cricketers, but I think for people in general, that no matter how, you're never too old to just, go after your dreams, to just keep faith and keep performing. And yeah, one day, if you're good enough, you'll get your rewards. Yeah.
And look, he's a fit guy. Like you say, he's been working on his fitness a lot, his diet, everything. There's no reason that he can't go on till he's in his late 30s, like 38, 39. The fitness levels that these guys have. You saw what happened with Pakistan and Misbah-ul Haq. He made his debut in his early 30s, and he ended up forcing himself to play till he was like 42 or something, just, to cement a good international career for him. So, so it can happen. I'm not saying Surya is going to play till he's 42, but certainly.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Dhoni is playing till 42, so why not?
Not for India. Yeah. So that's the difference, isn't it? And by his late 30s, he was slowing down the reflexes and all that. So, but I think Surya could potentially play till his late 30s if he wants it enough. So there's still time. There's still World Cups. You never know. He could go on and have a good, successful career on paper, as well as this impact he's had in this short space of time. But again, just brilliant from him, and India getting the job done in the end in Rajkot as well, thanks to his fireworks, and then backed up with the ball as well. Right, we've got the ODIs on the way against Sri Lanka. 3 ODIs. Action never really seems to stop. As we record this podcast, it's tomorrow. So by the time you listen to this, it might well be underway. We'll obviously react to whatever happens in that series as well, but that's all we've got time for today. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.